what are some ways that we can prove our violations?
Okay. So glad you asked that question. And it's going to be a good thing for me to talk about generally. One important thing to understand is there is a big difference between what a lawyer can do in litigation and what is successful in credit reporting and credit disputing world and credit repair. So in a court of law, which we're going to be suing, and mostly federal court, we have to prove ironclad. So I'm so glad that question got asked, which means don't throw away any mail. If we're working with you, don't throw away mail from debt collectors, don't throw away mail from creditors, landlords, what have you. The credit reporting agencies, if you get mail from them, because by the way, if you hire an attorney or hire a credit repair, group, and they dispute for you, the law still says the results come back to the consumer directly. So even though I may send a letter on a consumer's behalf, the consumer is going to get the result. So the best way to prove these violations is to always keep the evidence. Let's talk about other types of violations, right? So let's say it's a phone call and a debt collector is rude and aggressive and makes threats or swears at you. Well, two things. One is that call is going to be recorded on their end. I can guarantee it. The other thing is in your state, which check your state, you may have the right to record them. For example, in Florida is what's called a two-way recording state. So I can't record someone unless I tell them. But everyone knows you get that phone call and it says this call may be monitored for quality assurance or training purposes. That is a notice to you that they may record, so you automatically have the right to record in the state of Florida. You don't even have to ask or tell them because they have already told you, hey, I might be recording you. You can record them. So that's another important thing. Don't throw out mail. Don't delete voicemails. Don't delete your call history, in your call log, because if we're going to sue debt collectors, we have to prove what they did. We either need the letter that they shouldn't have sent you, that phone call that's going to be recorded. If someone's rude to you on the phone, just take notes, and write a little date next to it. Because in a court, if I say, hey, my client took contemporaneous handwritten notes, you can see it on this notepad. It's dated that day at the same time as the phone call. Who are they going to believe? They're going to believe the consumer with these notes, or are they going to believe the debt collector saying, oh, I never threatened that. Oh, and by the way, we lost the phone recording somehow, which always happens. But how we prove these things is through evidence. And that evidence is don't throw anything out, keep notes, don't delete voicemails, especially the mail. And then prove the violations for the credit reporting. That really depends on the nature of the dispute. If you're saying I didn't pay late and they marked me late, well, show me your clear check. Show me the payment that you submitted through the online portal on the 29th day. Sometimes these companies get greedy, right? You have 30 days to generally pay until they mark you late. Well, companies have been sued for send the payment on the 29th day. Well, guess what? It goes to the bottom of their pile. So by the time they get to, it's been 32 days. They can't do that, right? So we would have to prove, hey, I postmarked the payment this date and so on and so forth. But if it's ID theft, we have to prove you didn't take out these loans. If it's I settled this account, we have to prove you paid that settlement. The proof is always going to be in the pudding, but it's just keep the evidence, don't throw anything out, keep good notes, it will be golden. Great question.
Right. Before Mike asks another question. So I always talk about like the consumer reports, the credit bureaus, which is Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, has like incomplete, like it's inconsistent, like the open date last active, all that stuff is not reporting correctly. And I tell people to send a letter and tell them to update the information. I don't know or not, but most times they don't update it. Is that technically a violation? And can people technically serve the credit bureaus for not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, back when I was talking to Robin about the ways you can dispute, it has to be inaccurate, incomplete, or too old generally. Well, if they're reporting inconsistently, it has to be one of them, at least one of them have to be inaccurate, right? So one of the things we love to do on the lawyer side, and we absolutely litigate this. I sue credit bureaus for this all the time, and we serve them with federal lawsuits, Dave, because they're reporting inconsistently. If Experian is reporting an open date of this month and TransUnion and Equifax are reporting it something different, we know for 100% certainty someone is reporting inaccurately because it can't both be true, if it's different months. Same thing, if they're reporting a different balance. I don't care if a balance is off by $1 on a different report. someone has broken the law because they have reported inaccurate information. So inconsistent equals inaccurate, always, because something has to be wrong. And then what we do is we send a letter and we say, okay, Capital One, LVNB, whoever it is, here's what's being reported inconsistently between the bureaus. Fix it. What that means is they have to either make them all match, and that has to still be accurate, or they have to delete it. But they almost always just verify. Absolutely. That's a great case. Love that case. Because it's so easy. I get to say, I mean, what are they going to do when I hold up two pieces of paper with different information? You know, you don't get to tell one story to one person and another story to another. So that's a great question. Inconsistency equals inaccuracy.
Ooh, that's easy. And around.
Now,
right,
let me also give a small caveat, and this is something I want to make clear to everyone too. Not every piece of wrong information or inaccuracy will end up in litigation. There's still an analysis that has to go through, what's called materiality. That's a legal term. It's always in cases. It's in a bunch of case law. What that means is it has to be important enough. You know, the open date, that's important because your open date will often determine how long something can be reported, right? But, you know, if, you know how they have those payment grids on some of the reports, you know, the 60 months, if it shows no data in one of those months, probably not going to sue on that, you know, because there's 60 months there. And if it shows your on-time payments otherwise, like, that's wrong. You can dispute it. They should fix it. But if you come to me and say, hey, Aaron, they're showing a no data on this 1 month of 60 and the other 59 are right, I'm going to say, you know what, that's annoying, but that's not worthy of a lawsuit. But open date, they're reporting the date of last payment differently, the date of first delinquency differently, the past due balance, any of the big indicators, like the big important things, how long something's going to be deleted. If there's inconsistency among any of that information, it equals inaccuracy, equals lawsuit.
Oh man, that's a layup, man. I see that a lot, actually.
It is, and honestly, I tell people this all the time. I could just practice with enough people if I just like set up a stand at a flea market outside the grocery store, because there was a special on 20 minutes. What's
Yes, it was 60 minutes, and
60 minutes.
yeah, it was called 100 million inaccuracies, something
Exactly,
like that.
100 million accuracies, and they shared a stat that 40% of people have material errors on their credit report, and that means material errors means it is something big enough that will impact your ability to get credit, a job, an apartment. 40% of people. So that means there's 180 people on here, right? So that's 64 people, you know, probably right now, just on this Zoom or live YouTube, have errors that are material. So 40%. And I think that number is low because these companies since then, that's about 10 years old, that CBS segment. In the last 10 years, these companies have started to embrace more technology and more artificial intelligence. And that's causing more inaccuracies. So I would say half or more. So literally, I could just set up outside the grocery store and say, hey, when's the last time you checked your credit report? When's the last time you? And half the people are going to have problems. And I could just practice my law that way. But yeah.
Oh man.
My biggest thing is they don't care. That's my
Who's the they in that sentence? The companies or the consumers or everyone?
the credit bureaus.
They don't care because here's another secret I'm going to tell you. They know they break the law and they don't care because it is cheaper for them to pay me and to pay all the consumers that sue them across the company than it is to fix. And I know that for a fact because they've run those numbers. They hired actuaries and they said, all right, for us, 100 million errors, right? 100 million people in this country at that point had errors on their credit report. And they thought, all right, what would it take for us to get truly 100% accurate? And the number was, it would be insane. They'd have to hire tens of thousands of people. Those people would have to spend an hour on each dispute. Guess how long a dispute agent spends on average on a dispute? Mike or Dave? How long?
Like 2 seconds.
Less than a minute. Less than a
Or,
minute.
Oh,
So the computers, it's instantaneous. There's
yeah.
no investigation. That's one computer saying to another. That takes a nanosecond. But even when they get to the overflow, so I send a 20-page letter and someone in the Philippines pulls that up, they're being timed. They're supposed to handle that in less than 60 seconds. How is that reasonable? It's not reasonable, but they don't care. Experian's litigation budget every year is $30 to $60 million. That's what at the beginning of the year, when their board of directors gets together and decide, all right, what money do we need to set aside for litigation this year? 30 to 60 million. That means that means it's more expensive than 30 to 60 million than to fix the problem. And that's every year.
Wow.
So yeah, they don't care. They're making enough money. It's cheaper for them to settle these cases than it is to fix it.
Man, that's amazing.